So for this video, I want to go over macros, and I want to give a sample scenario for a macro. So I'm just going to use this data file that I use a lot, and it's the TMY3 data file. It's a typical meteorological year, but it's an hourly data file that gives you certain weather attributes for many areas throughout the country. So I'm just going to go ahead down to Delaware, and I'm going to do Wilmington. I'm going to download this data file. So when I open this up in Excel, you can see that it's sort of a mess. Here's some attributes of Wilmington up here. There's the date and the time. You know, there's a good bit of stuff down here. However, there's a lot of stuff that I may not want. You can see that this file's there. So, and I may want to use these data files all the time, and I may want to get rid of certain columns or do different things over and over again. Now, I could go ahead and manually do that each time, but I want to show you a better way. So the first thing we want to go is we want to go to the Developer tab. Now, if you don't have the Developer tab, you go to File, Options, then you want to go to Customize Ribbon, and you want to make sure the Developer tab is checked here. So go ahead and hit OK. And then if you didn't have your Developer tab before, it should show up once you check that. Now, there's all sorts of things we can do with macros. We can write macros if we know how to do VBA code. We can do all sorts of things. But what I really want to do is I want to record a macro and show you how that works. So let's go ahead and just hit record macro. I'm going to make this my TMY3 simplify macro. You can give it a shortcut key. I'm not going to in this case. Here's the really cool thing. I could either store it in this workbook, or I could store it in my personal macro workbook, which loads every time I load a macro, which is great. And I could even write it a little description. For now, I'm just going to store it in this workbook. I'm going to hit OK. And you can see now it has the stop recording thing here. So, and it says each of the commands you perform will be saved so that you can play them back again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with this file a little bit. I'm going to get rid of this top row. And I'm going to get rid of a lot of things here. The things I'm really worried about, I want this GHI. And that GHI is actually something called global horizontal illuminance, but really I'll just say solar power. It's hitting the surface of the Earth. I want these to be wrapped, so I'm going to go ahead and hit home. I'm going to wrap that text. And then I also want, I don't want any of this stuff. I want the dry bulb temperature, which is just the temperature you're used to. I want the dew point. And I'll take the relative humidity as well, and the wind speed. Okay, so now I did all that. I'm going to go back to my developer. I'm going to stop recording my macro. So, what I could do is basically, then I could say, okay, well, let's go back to my very beginning of my file. And if I go ahead and look at my macros, I have my TMY simplify. If I run, then it just does all the steps that I just did, which is great. Now this could be formatting, this could be formulas, this can be basically anything you want to do on the macros. So now that we have this, let's just do one more scenario. So I already created in this other sheet, I created a couple sort of dummy charts with just some fake data for 4 different states around the area that I live in. So let's pretend that I had these type of charts, and obviously these are really simple. Let's pretend I have this type of data arrangement, And I could have this in this sheet or in other sheets, and maybe I want to format it no matter where it exists in the file. So that's why I put it at different locations. So let me show you two different things here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two different macros. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and record a macro to, and first I'm going to do no, no RR, so no relative references, and I'll explain what that means in a second. So let me show you how this works, and then I'll do a different one. So let's do these four. Let's do borders. Let's wrap the text, and let's give it a bluish background. Okay, and then we'll go to stop recording. And then we'll just go ahead and reverse what we just did just so we could see the change. I'll just do a left border and no fill and not wrap text. Now, if I go ahead and hit into developer and I go ahead into my macros and with a no RR I'm going to run, that's going to go ahead and just do the same thing I did. The problem is now maybe, what if I want to make this blue and I want to do all the same things? I want to wrap the text there. Let's go ahead and run my macro and see what happens. What it does is it only does this, the top left corner of that. It only does the A1 cell. So it's an absolute reference macro. So now let's go down here, and then we're going to do the relative reference macro, and we're going to go ahead and hit record, and we're going to do RR. We'll say with RR, just so that way it's clear. So it's recording again. Let's go ahead and just do some different things. We'll just do a thick box border. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll do all of this. We'll do no borders first, and then we'll do a thick box border, and then we'll do light greenish. And we'll make the text a little bit bigger just so it's obvious. Now we'll stop recording. So now let's say I want to do the greenish thing here. Go ahead and hit macros. We'll hit with RR, hit run. So basically it'll do this greenish thick box border wherever you go with the relative references. So that's the really nice thing about using relative references. It depends on where you start. Whereas if you don't use the relative references, it doesn't depend on where you start. So I can go ahead and just run this macro over and over and over wherever I want in my Excel sheet. Whereas without using the relative references, it just treats it as starting at the location that you started at, the cell you started at, which in this case was A1 for me. So that's all about macros. We're just scratching the surface here. There's all sorts of great things you can do with macros, but I hope you enjoyed this video.